All right, we're on our macromolecules and enzymes unit, and we're still on learning target 1. This is where students will be able to describe the structure and function of the 4 major macromolecules and provide examples of each. Now, last time we talked about what a macromolecule was, so just a quick brief review again. It is a large molecule, okay, that has many smaller subunits joined together. The large molecule is the polymer. Poly means many. And the subunits that we're talking about are the monomers. So you're going to have to know what the monomers are, or subunits, for each of these macromolecules. We listed the 4 main types were carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So we talked about the carbohydrates and lipids in the last PowerPoint. Today we are going to be looking at the last 2 macromolecules, proteins and nucleic acids. First, we're going to start with the proteins. The main function of proteins, you'll find out, is that there are many functions. They can be involved with your structure of your body, with repair, enzymes that control your chemical reactions. So we're going to have a chart in a little bit that's going to show a lot of different types of proteins and all the different roles they can play in your body. Your body's made up of mostly of proteins that you're going to find out that help you in various ways. Now, something you should notice, if you think back, both the lipids and the carbohydrates for their elements had CHO, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Proteins also have that carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, but now they have an N, which stands for nitrogen. So for proteins, we think of CHON. Lipids and carbohydrates are CHO, CHO. Now the proteins are CHON. The monomer or subunit for a protein is an amino acid. We have 20 different amino acids, and the order that those amino acids are in are going to determine the type of protein it's going to be and what type of shape that protein will have. And the shape of a protein determines its function. So those amino acids, those subunits, are so important because even though all living things have these same ones, they're not put together in the exact same order. And that's what makes different organisms, their proteins, a little bit different than our proteins. Here's that chart I was talking about. Look at all the different functions that proteins can have in your body. They can play a role in movement. Your actin and myosin help contract your muscles. They can play a role in structure. Your collagen is going to help form all your bones, tendons, ligaments, your cartilage. That's going to help with the structure of your body. The keratin, it gives strength to your hair. They can also be involved in regulation. Enzymes, they speed up chemical reactions. We're going to have one whole section just on enzymes later on, and very, very important function for proteins. They can be involved in transport. Your hemoglobin is a protein in your red blood cells that helps carry your oxygen. So obviously that's very important for your body and for your survival. Nutrition, casein in milk helps stores amino acids that are used by newborn animals. And also for defense, your antibodies are proteins. They are proteins in your immune system that kind of remember if you've been infected before, then they are put out and they try to destroy the invader, whether that be a virus of some sort or some other infection. The other one is your nucleic acids. They function in your hereditary information, and that's going to help code for your proteins. So nucleic acids are kind of related to proteins in that regard. They still also have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. They have nitrogen, like what the proteins had, but now they've got an extra phosphorus, okay, an extra element. So nucleic acids are a little bit tougher to say. Remember, lipids and carbohydrates are CHO, CHO, proteins are CHON, but now nucleic acids are CHONP, which is a little bit more difficult to say, CHONP. But we emphasize that P because that's what makes it a little bit different, and that it has that phosphorus. Now, the subunit or monomer of a nucleic acid is a nucleotide. Okay? Now, that sounds, if you look at the beginning, nucleic acids, nucleotides, that should help always allow you to match up the monomer for a nucleic acid. There's three main parts of a nucleotide. One part of it is the sugar, another part is the phosphate group, and another one is the nitrogen base. This is the part that has the nitrogen in it. Okay, so if we look over here to the side, this right here is your nitrogen base. See, this is a double ring structure, but you can see it's got this amino group, this nitrogens there, and here's some more nitrogens. Okay, it has a sugar. Here's your sugar group here. Remember, they're usually a ring structure. And then it has this phosphate group. You can see the phosphorus is in the middle here. And then it has all these oxygens bonded around it. That's what makes it a phosphate group. Okay, so those three parts are what make up a nucleotide, which is the subunit of a nucleic acid. Now, the interesting thing about nucleic acids is they are universal. That means that they are found in every living organism that's been discovered so far. Usually they'll have either DNA or RNA. Those are the two main examples here. DNA carries the instructions for making proteins, okay? And RNA uses the instructions to actually make the proteins. So they're both related to each other in that way. But again, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. That's what the NA stands for. RNA stands for ribonucleic acid. So there you can see right here. Here's the nucleic acid. Nucleic acid. Okay? So let's take a little look at comparing or contrasting in this case, because mostly there's differences between proteins and nucleic acids. What were the elements in proteins again? What were you supposed to remember? CHON. So carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. How about the elements in nucleic acids? CHONP. Hopefully you guys are just reciting it yourselves here. I can't hear you, but hopefully you hear me. CHONP. There you go. It has that phosphorus. The function, remember, proteins have lots of functions. So they can be transport, regulation, structure, defense, remember your antibodies. So lots of different functions for proteins. Nucleic acids can function in terms of your hereditary information. I'm just going to write info. The codes for proteins. And it's all your proteins that give you your traits. That's why it's your hereditary information, because those proteins are what are going to give you your traits. What are the subunits of proteins again? Those are the amino acids. And what are the subunits of nucleic acids? Nucleotides. Again, it sounds almost like the name, so that should help you remember it. And what are some examples of proteins? Remember, oops, sorry about that. We have enzymes, antibodies, you have keratin in your hair. So lots of different examples for proteins. Nucleic acids, there's just two. Do you remember what they are? DNA and RNA. There you go. Okay, so some differences between proteins and nucleic acids. So let's look at the whole big chart together. Here we have the four main macromolecules. What are the elements again? Cho, cho, chan, chomp. What are the subunits or monomers? Carbohydrates, it's a saccharide. For lipids, they don't have a subunit, but fats do have glycerol and 3 fatty acids, so we ask you to remember that part. Amino acids for proteins, and nucleotides for nucleic acids. What is their function? Again, remember carbohydrates, short-term energy, lipids, long-term energy. Proteins, they function as structure, enzymes as far as regulation, and then nucleic acids are your genetic makeup for helping you make proteins. And what are some examples of each? Carbohydrates had plenty: glucose, fructose, starch. Lipids, waxes, steroids, fats. Proteins, collagen, keratin, enzymes. Nucleic acids, DNA, and RNA. So basically, if you know this chart right here, you basically know learning target 1, because that is the basically what we want you to know is all of those different parts. So a good thing would be is to kind of make a blank chart like this and see if you could fill it in yourself, to kind of practice that. All right.